91%. Imagine this. You're waking up, pouring that first cup of morning coffee, and you're scrolling on your phone, right? Suddenly, you see a headline that literally stops you cold. 91%.
Yeah, that was the terrifying statistic splashed all over the news recently, claiming there's a 91% higher risk of cardiovascular death for anyone practicing intermittent fasting. Basically, this preliminary abstract from the American Heart Association dropped, and it sent millions of people into an absolute panic. You know, folks who rely on the 16-8 fasting method, where you eat for 8 hours and fast for 16 to manage their weight and metabolic health, they suddenly thought, oh my gosh, I am putting my heart in immediate severe danger.
But here is the part that most people completely get wrong. And honestly, it brilliantly illustrates how data can just be so easily misunderstood. Let's look at the actual reality behind that terrifying headline. The study that caused all this chaos, it had some incredibly severe methodological flaws. Get this, it relied on just 2 single days of self-reported dietary recall questionnaires to categorize a person's lifelong eating habits. Seriously, just 2 days of memory out of an entire lifespan.
Okay, let's dive into this a little deeper because it brings us to a really critical concept called the reverse casualty trap. See, the researchers totally failed to account for exactly why some of these people were naturally eating in such a short window. A lot of individuals with extremely short eating windows aren't restricting their food for health or fitness reasons. They're often dealing with severe chronic illnesses like advanced heart failure or cancer that just naturally kill their appetite. Or they're working these grueling shift work schedules that completely disrupt their normal lives. Those underlying health conditions are what actually increase the risk of mortality, not the clock on the wall.
Now here is where we find the actual danger. The real cardiovascular risk wasn't the 16-8 schedule itself, but something called sarcopenia, which is progressive muscle loss. When people lose weight through fasting without really being careful about it, up to 25% of the weight they lose can be precious, metabolically active lean muscle mass. And losing muscle, well, that is strongly associated with a much higher risk of chronic cardiovascular issues.
So, if the headlines got it so wrong, what's actually going on inside your body when you fast? I want you to think of your body like a super sophisticated hybrid car. For the first 0 to 12 hours of fasting, you're running on your gas engine. This is glycolysis, where your body is just burning the glucose from your recent meals. But then, somewhere between 12 and 36 hours, you flip what's known as the metabolic switch. Your body seamlessly transitions over to its clean electric engine, burning stored body fat to produce this highly efficient fuel called ketones.
Now, there is a massive myth out there that using this hybrid engine permanently slows down your metabolism. That's simply not true. The decline in your resting metabolic rate during a 16-8 fast is actually identical to what happens during standard traditional calorie counting. But fasting does something entirely unique. Rigorous clinical trials using metabolic chambers have revealed that 16-8 fasting actually drives a fascinating 22.7% increase in non-metabolic fecal energy loss. Basically, your body naturally excretes excess energy without slowing down your internal furnace at all. Pretty wild, right? And while that metabolic engine is running clean, your body is actively remodeling itself from the inside out. The absolutely crucial point here is a process called autophagy. During that 16-hour fasting window, your cells begin to literally degrade and recycle damaged proteins and organelles. It's like a deep cleaning, microscopic cellular repair process. Combine that with a dynamic remodeling of your gut microbiome, which actively lowers systemic inflammation, and you've really found the true unsung heroes of cardiovascular and metabolic healing.
Now, as we transition away from the physical mechanics and get into the really profound impact that fasting has on your hormones and your mind, I need to pause for a deeply important reminder. This video is for informational purposes only and does not substitute for professional medical advice. If you or a loved one are experiencing a mental health crisis, please call 988, the National Suicide Hotline, 911, or go to the nearest emergency room immediately.
Okay, let's get right into it, because your metabolic health and your mental health are just intrinsically linked. You really cannot separate the mind from the body, especially when we're talking about the energetic stress of fasting. When you change how you fuel your body, you are fundamentally changing the hormonal signals being sent straight to your brain, and that directly influences your stress levels, your mood, and your overall psychological resilience. And honestly, this beautifully illustrates the core human element of fasting. It is deeply, wonderfully individualized. Just look at the stark biological variations between men and women. Fit men, for instance, generally handle fasting with total ease, preserving their physical strength and their hormonal balance. But healthy, lean, premenopausal women, they can experience what we might call a leaky battery response. Aggressive fasting triggers a protective stress response in the female neuroendocrine system, which actually downregulates vital reproductive hormones. Yet, on the flip side, women suffering from polycystic ovary syndrome or PCOS see an incredible, highly therapeutic reduction in active testosterone and vastly improved insulin markers when they use a 16-8 protocol.
Because of this high sensitivity, something called cycle syncing is vitally important for women. During the follicular phase, which is the first 14 days of the menstrual cycle when estrogen is rising, the female body is incredibly resilient to the energetic stress of fasting. But during the luteal phase, days 15 to 28, progesterone takes over. The body naturally becomes more insulin resistant and highly sensitive to stress. So to protect their neuroendocrine health, women really need to ease up on fasting during this time. Maybe adopt a much gentler 12-12 protocol, or even just pause fasting entirely.
Now, regardless of who you are, chronobiology matters immensely. When you eat is just as important as what you eat. Aligning your meals with the sun, say eating from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., is vastly superior. Doing this results in a major reduction in fasting insulin and significantly lowers blood pressure compared to eating late into the evening. Simply put, your metabolism just functions way better when it's synchronized with daylight. So, the absolutely crucial point is how we actually implement this safely in the real world. Remember that scary cardiovascular headline from earlier? Right, the real danger was muscle loss. To protect yourself, you need to follow the 50-gram protein rule. You want to aim to consume at least 50 grams of high-quality protein per meal during your eating window, and you absolutely must incorporate resistance training, meaning you need to lift weights. This is literally the life-saving practical advice that preserves your heart-protecting muscle mass while you safely burn fat.
We also have to be exceptionally clear about who should never attempt a 16-8 fasting protocol. These are strict medical contraindications. Pregnant or breastfeeding women, individuals with type 1 diabetes, and absolutely anyone with a history of eating disorders must avoid this entirely. The high risk of severe health crises like acute hypoglycemia or triggering restrictive behaviors far outweighs any potential metabolic benefit.
Ultimately, the 16-8 method is not some magical, effortless cure-all. It's a clinical tool. A very powerful one, but still just a tool. And like any tool, its safety and efficacy depend entirely on how you use it. It really requires a holistic alignment. You have to honor your body's need for high-quality nutrients, you must respect your circadian rhythms, and you really have to stay deeply attuned to your psychological well-being.
Look, if you are navigating these complex intersections of metabolic and mental health, you do not have to do it alone. For those of you in Ohio seeking a truly integrated, empathetic approach to your well-being, please visit www.providersforhealthyliving.com. They offer comprehensive support across mental health, personalized nutrition, and weight loss services. They treat you as a whole, connected person, not just a set of symptoms.
Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the science of our bodies for this explainer. If you found this breakdown valuable, please take a quick second to like, share, comment, and subscribe to support our community. It really helps us continue bringing you these clear, structured insights. And before you go, I want to leave you with one final thought. Knowing what you know now about your body's incredible metabolic switch, how will you choose to fuel your own hybrid engine tomorrow?